Meeting of UFO. Tonight they have the pleasure of the company of Mr. Tony Toppin. Now Tony, many of you may be familiar with. He's a well-known UFO investigator and contactee. He's from Selby in North Yorkshire, but he's Southport. He was in Selby, I thought it was. Right, he's in Southport now. He spent some considerable time living in London, where he attended stage school, pursuing his ambition to become an actor. Now, since the age of 2, Tony has been subjected to extreme paranormal experiences. And in 1992, whilst in London, he had his first UFO encounter. And that was followed sometime later by a further one in Paddington. He moved back to his hometown there in 1996, where his paranormal experiences increased. And in 1996, he began to have encounters with UFOs appearing over his house. And between May and November 1999, he filmed a UFO coming in over his house, which appeared on numerous occasions. In fact, he successfully filmed a number of UFOs and has had many interesting and unique interviews with people involved in UFO encounters, and he himself has been subject to extraterrestrial contact, I believe. Now, as a result, he's also been subjected to incidents of being followed by helicopters and covert agents, and a lot of other things which no doubt he'll tell you about. Now, Tony, in being a witness to so many UFO encounters, is one of the UK's most recognised TV and radio guests, has appeared many times on both television and radio, including BBC News, BBC 2, Channel 4, Sky TV, and Kerrang, LBC and Heart Radio. So a good cross-section there. Now in his fascinating talk tonight, he'll take us on a journey of image analysis and a saga of communication with the UFOs that fly over him. So please put your hands together for Mr. Tony Toppin. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. What a lovely turnout. It really is a credit to yourselves, the people here. If you have no objections, I'm just sitting tonight. Normally I would stand. I might have a wander round. We're going to do a little audience participation thing later. Very small thing, just to demonstrate something. But I'm just sitting for now. It's just a bit easier for me because you can get fatigued doing this. What this talk was actually called was a walk through the CE5 encounter, a visual walk actually, which is what it is, but it's also to communicate with you from a UK perspective what really goes on behind the scenes to an ordinary member of the public like myself when you have contact with UFOs that are coming in over your house and when you have agencies coming at you. To all intents and purposes, you've got to remember that the people concerned are following an agenda that is not accountable. It's not accountable to we the people. And if you look at the work of Corey Good, David Wilcox and a few others, you will find that there's a very big difference, ladies and gentlemen, to what is written on the internet and what goes on in real life, as you will discover. And I have been to the gates of hell and back with all this, as you will see as we go through it and what happened to me and the UFO footage and so on and so forth. My mother, what I want to talk about is my mother, because it's as if my mother chucked herself in front of an express train for me. She didn't really, but what I want to show you is a contrast of the cost, the hell, the insights, the questions as to why this has happened to me. And I will probably give you a perspective like no other on it, because there's a lot written on the internet that's a lot of BS. People are not getting answers to questions, and the big conferences in the UK, the big UFO conferences, they just tend to kind of, avoid is not the word, but they tend not to bother with me. But the small groups like yourself, although I wouldn't call this a small gathering this evening, but small groups right across the UK, people's houses, truth groups and so on, it's a privilege for me to turn up. I normally pack them out, you see, because of my story, my mother. So let's set a contrast, ladies and gentlemen, as to what we're talking about here. My mother, I had to look after her for nearly 8 years, tragically lost her in March due to Alzheimer's disease. It shut her down. For 3 years of that, she was incontinent, and we couldn't get help. And this has a bearing on the UFO situation that I went through. And as we will discover, if it wasn't for her, in a way, the escalation of contact encounters would not have increased, but it did. If you can imagine, it's quite heartbreaking for a son to look after his mother in that condition, but that's what I did. And I do believe that she was targeted. If you could just move to the next slide, the luxury of somebody changing slides is I tell you, it's unbelievable. Anyway, this is a visual exploration, should I say, of my UFO and CE5 experiences, and there is a cost to this, and I wish to show you what the CE5 encounter is really about. Over the skies of the UK there is a warning, and this is interesting because you have, within the public domain, you have Tom DeLonge and his team and Luis Elizondo. I was on talk radio the other night talking about all that. And he has a kind of a mindset of what's in the hangars, dude. Look what we've got in the hangars, dudes. Ain't it cool? Ain't it fabulous? And really, that's leading us nowhere. And of course, Luis Elizondo, the DIA guy, he stood up and he said that in front of MUFON, and he was telling them about what his department did do and what his department didn't do and what his department thought of the flashing lights in the sky. But at no point did he mention that the DIA and other agencies are aware of the alien presence, especially in our oceans. At no point did he say that, because none dare. And then you'll hear that they're draining the swamp, they're making arrests. This is not true either. The entrenchment of the UFO cover-up lies firmly within the Nazi Germany Operation Paperclip, and believe it or not, possibly under the Nixon administration as well. When Tom DeLonge's team, they had a team of spooks there to back him up. One of them stood up and said, oh yes, the Nimitz aircraft carrier group, hostile UFOs. The question is this: when is a hostile UFO interaction, or when are these UFOs appearing, which are classed as hostile? They are in fact warning. So over the skies of the UK we see a warning, and this story that I'm going to tell you is what happens when you have an ongoing liaison with them. Move to the next one, please. This, for example, is typical of the interaction that I have with UFOs. This is a typical one where I'm escorted home by her. I say her, and we'll come to her in a minute, but basically that is a UFO and it is not an aircraft. The thing is that I have Jason Gleaves to thank from UFO Only. I would highly recommend him as a speaker for here. He's a great guy. He's the guy who brings my images to life. That one on the right, ladies and gentlemen, is a plasma-type UFO. The background of it is very, very interesting as to who they are, and that one there is being escorted home by a UFO at a height of my harassment. Now, this is it. You see, I was targeted, ladies and gentlemen, by what could only be described as MK Ultra-style technology, while at the same time, this happened over a long period of years, while at the same time trying to care for my mother who had Alzheimer's. So I've got all this going on around me, and I'm having to look after my mother as well. And this provoked, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, from these people in the UFOs, this provoked a reaction from them, an angry reaction, which I'll come to later. That one there, ladies and gents, on the right, is me at Holy Island at a festival. I'm just about to go in and give a talk, all of a sudden they appear. Luckily, we spotted it. I'd taken a photo and said, look everyone, isn't that scenic? Until Jason spotted it. How the hell he spotted it, I've no idea, and he's amplified it up, and it's a plasma-type UFO. Let's move to the next one, mate. So, in the course of my work, believe it or not, anybody would think, although I feel I'm among friends this evening, but anybody would feel that I'm the fantasist, I'm the crackpot, or in general, you guys and girls sat in the audience who've had UFO experiences, you might consider yourself that you might want to just keep quiet about it, because it's kind of like got the chortle factor and the ridicule factor, but yeah, it's a very serious issue, there's a very serious cost to it. And my biggest occupational hazards is cranks, kooks, people who think that they work for the intelligence service. We had the guy from Rudlow Manor who after every sentence said that's classified, I can't talk about it. We also had a man who claimed that MI5 had arrested the Duck Man in Birmingham, which was absolutely hilarious, and he indicated, and also what he'd done as well is he'd drawn some dodgy material in a notebook and showed me what the aliens did. And it wasn't very nice what he drew. The organisers asked him to leave. We had the guy who claimed he worked for Mossad, who travelled from New York to Germany, and therein lays the rub, Germany, I'll come to that. Look, Germany, then he went to London, got a train from London to York, met me for an hour to discuss UFOs and claimed he worked for the Mossad. We had a guy who claimed that he worked for USAF Air Intelligence, sent me this beautiful-looking email with a photo of him saying that they wanted to, we're the Air Force, we want to know about UFOs, blah, blah, blah. Turned out that he was actually convicted for child pornography on a base somewhere in Miami. We've had all that. I've also had offers from the Illuminati and Agency 33, and when you turn around to them and say, there's actually nothing you can show me nor offer me, because I've got all this information coming at me from those from the stars above, they normally go berserk, and I mean berserk, and they threaten some kind of bizarre violence on you. We've also got the people from the Foreign Office who I met in London who claimed after a few glasses of wine that they worked for a classified agency in the Foreign Office, and they were sent out to Iraq to hunt Saddam's nukes, but for some strange reason they claimed they'd gone to Germany and they couldn't find them. So this is this constant kind of crank theme that's going on with people who think that they work for agencies, and then you've got the real McCoy coming after you. You've got the unmarked helicopters. You've got the MK Ultra style technology going on. And the fact of the matter is this. How many of you have heard of MJ12? I'm sure you have. Yeah, you've all heard? Yeah, of course, right. So we're going to cover another agency later, but MJ12. But the fact of the matter is this. MJ12 should, and the members of it, should hang their heads in shame over what is going on behind the scenes. You will find that there's a lot of talk and waffle about disclosure, but the fact of the matter is nothing is really happening because nobody dare tell the truth about the lousy, stinking circus that goes on behind the scenes, and the fact that men gave their lives on the Normandy beaches not for this circus to happen behind the scenes. That sets a kind of like a backdrop to the UFO cover-up, I do feel. And it greatly concerns, even the ETs and the UFOs are greatly concerned about what they're seeing. We developed submarines. Russia has developed this latest submarine, but sadly we still can't seem to control the pollution of our oceans. Just move on. Thank you. In my early childhood, I began age 2 with something known, that was my first vision at age 2. It was a paranormal vision, and it was Hindu related, and it's known as Yasmat. Yasmat is a term given by the ETs in the UFOs to actually describe what you sow, you reap. What your work does now has ramifications in the future. Technically speaking, it's like a form of time travel where I've caused this myself unbeknown to me. That's the thing. What you're about to see and witness, I've caused myself unbeknown to me. Yasmat. It also means Royal German bloodline as well. I referred just then to Germany. I'm going to come to that later. But what that was, it was Hindu in nature. It was like the vision of Lord Ganesha going through the wall. 2 elephants going through the wall at speed. My father, bless him, tried to understand what was going on. That's me pointing. But I'm going hysterical because I've seen these things go through the wall. I'm 2 years of age, and they constantly, throughout the 40 years of dealing with this, they constantly reference to it and reference to it because it has a hidden meaning, and I'm not sure why. Next one, please, mate. That's my father. My father was a miraculous healer, and I mean that. This is no lie, but he had the capability, it was almost Jesus-like, he had the capability to heal. He healed Nancy's neuralgia. The woman came into the house screaming in agony, and I mean screaming in pain. With the healing hands that he had, he healed her neuralgia. He brought a cat back from the dead. He revived Uncle Bill in an ambulance. The ambulance crew were absolutely baffled. And he was approached by the KGB. So he said, in Vienna, in 1950. The thing about my father, well, the thing about Vienna, sorry, was there was a spy ring running by the Russians in Vienna in 1950, and they approached him. He's never really told me what they approached him about, but needless to say, one wonders with the nature of time and the space-time continuum and UFOs in general, whether people, even in 1950, certain parties, possibly the Russians, actually knew what was going on. I'll come to the Russians as well during the course of this talk. What we're seeing there is ability to heal, but also, and this kind of like astounds people, he would never hit me when I was naughty. He had the capability to lay me sparko on the bed with a headache when I was aged 8, 7, whatever. That was not very nice. The second thing about it was abuse was going on. some real abuse went on with me. And you cannot help but wonder whether, because of his ability, he was targeted by negative forces, resulting in an ordinary, kind man doing things that he shouldn't have really been doing. It's quite bizarre what happened with our family. So what it is, ladies and gentlemen, is for some reason I'm being tracked and targeted. So I'm a man who's trying to get to the bottom of his paranormal experiences and can't quite seem to understand. And then the UFOs turn up kind of thing just to add to the fun. It's one great big mystery that I'm trying to resolve, and every day I get closer to it all the time as to why it's going on. Next one. Back in 1992, I went to drama school. I got myself a top place at a London stage school. The manner of my father towards this was a shrug of the shoulders and, oh really son, really, oh great, just like that, which I never really forgave him for. Moved to London, and that's when the first, well actually no, it was 92 really when the first UFO began. It came in over the house. I was coming back from rehearsal. 91, yeah. Coming back from rehearsal, and the UFO came in like something out of Close Encounters, and then it flew off again. Well, it vanished, and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is that all about? In London, I began drama school, left drama school, worked in an office in Praed Street, Paddington. I first saw them. The UFO came in over a block of flats, and it was as if it was going to crash into a block of flats, and I'm about to run to a fire engine and say, look lads, that plane, but by the time I'd done that it had vanished, and they would be putting in a lot more appearances in the years ahead, coupled with a communication like no other with them, which was very, very revealing. That there is actually a very accurate drawing of one of the extraterrestrials that I witnessed. More about her later, but let us just say that we lived in an environment with my father and mother where in the 80s, in a Victorian style house with no bathroom and an outside toilet and no heating, and we lived in poverty. In fact, it's true to say that when I was at the local school, I was ridiculed and severely bullied for looking like a jippo and looking mucky, which is a disgraceful term to use, and it had an effect on me. The bullying was quite unpleasant. So we lived in this old house, and then we moved to the other side of town to better accommodation, and I'm asleep, and next minute now I know I'm dreaming, and all of a sudden I'm back in my old house, and there's this woman with her back to me, tying back her hair, and then she turns round and says, "How do I look?" Imagine that the face is a bit more pointed, the hair colour is spot on, the eyes are green, and it put the fear of God in me. I thought, what the hell are you looking at me? What is amazing about this is if anybody has contact with UFOs and they say, oh, well, I welcome them with open arms, I'm going to put the landing strip out and welcome them with my ambassador robes. In real life, it's not like that. And I was deeply shocked by what I saw. Deeply shocked. That was upon my return from London. And my dear mother was awoken when they first appeared over the house. It was quite bizarre. There was an orange flash of light. It woke my mother up. And then I heard this hello from nowhere, as if the garden had a signal imprint on it. You see, when you communicate with these UFOs, they leave a signal imprint. It's like, it's not just heard in the head, it's heard all around you, outside of you. You know that they're there. There is no mistaking it, you see. And that's what she looked like. And I would later have a liaison with that lady, a very drip, drip, drip kindergarten liaison, only going at a pace that I could handle, which is similar to UFO disclosure. There's a lot going on about UFO disclosure, but there's actually nothing happening because aliens only go, and aliens is the wrong word, people who look like us from other worlds only go at the pace humanity can handle. I'll come to that later. Next one, mate. What would happen with this lady in the early days when I first, is that we would have very strange visions coming at me. That's an early example of one of the visions that I had of a submarine being literally outmaneuvered by a UFO. A friend of mine who I used to, when I was a supervisor, a friend of mine who was ex-Royal Navy, worked on the submarines. He indicated to me, and he worked on radar on the submarines. He said that he was tracking UFOs with sonar and other gadgets that they had. And the speed of these undersea UFOs was nothing like the Americans and the British had. There was nothing that could compare. And what was happening was the communication from these visions indicated that they were monitoring closely nuclear matters, that they are maritime ETs. This is the big secret. It's not a secret really, I'm sure, but there's a lot going on in our oceans with them because that's where they're coming from. They have bases in the oceans, and I'll come to later. Some major UFO researchers would dismiss that as a new age platitude, kind of like in the 70s where we're all doomed, hey, let's make peace kind of thing. And they think it to be a new age platitude, but it is not. These are highly intelligent beings, advanced technology about 700 years ahead, and they are warning, continually warning, because they know what it's all about, and they've probably made the same disasters we have, but they've hung around a little longer to see things through. And they're here, they're very real, and they're here, and that is what happened to me. Now, it's 97 when I had that vision, and I couldn't understand why, but all became clear as I went along with it. So the journey begins with me, and as we can see, that's in 1999, before the Dr. Strangelove antics began. You see, ladies and gents, when you have contact with UFOs in real life, there is a distinct possibility that you don't know who is lurking in the woodwork, and sure enough, there are classified information groups out there, you might want to call them a modern version of MJ12, whatever you want to call them, that take a keen interest in certain people who have contact with UFOs. You see the large circle up there in the upper left, that's known as a dropper UFO. And the other thing that's arrived is a pencil-thin light. It's like a light that turns, it's very pencil-thin. It's going to come round the side of the house, and or rather fly around the house and present itself as a triangle craft. That's it, that Jason's done an excellent job there of just showing what that is. Now, a dropper stone UFO is evident in China, and it flies in the vertical configuration. It flies in like a vertical configuration across the skies, and that's them again, showing their presence, which began in 1999. Next one, mate. This would provoke a reaction from Dr. Strangelove. So what you've got here, with excellent analysis by Jason, is you've got the first overflight of them over my house. The craft illuminates a TV antenna because the theme from them is communication. The theme from them is signalling. So what they're doing is they're signalling to a third party that kind of, it involves me. It involves a very bizarre block operation that's going on around me. And as we can see, it would provoke a very strange reaction from the intelligence services is the wrong word, because some of the intelligence services who are protecting us from terrorism and all that kind of thing are overstretched. These guys are something else. These guys are classified information groups, probably involved with the military-industrial complex. As Eisenhower warned, and he clearly warned, that there was only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can save us from what is going on, and he was absolutely damn right. And I remember interviewing his great-granddaughter, Laura Eisenhower, for my radio show. She said to me, off-air, that he had had 2 heart attacks, Eisenhower, great-granddad, he'd had 2 heart attacks because he knew the truth about what was going on with the UFO phenomenon. And it's quite a disgusting circus when you drill down. Anyway, UFOs coming in, it illuminates a TV antenna, and that will provoke a reaction from certain quarters, because I just put it online on this website that pretends to know what is going on when I don't quite know, but nevertheless I put it up. That was back in 1999, but I put it up, and as somebody pointed out to me, you just don't know what's watching you, you just don't know what's in the woodwork. Next one. And as we can see, that's the TV antenna being illuminated by the UFO. The UFO is a small, we could describe it as a small mini helicopter or even a drone, but it ain't from round here. That's a police helicopter. That's the UFO that came in and illuminated the TV antenna quite intentionally, quite on purpose, from bases in our oceans. They don't come from the other planets. Well, they do, but when they're doing operations like this, they're coming from the oceans, so I'm told. Next one. That's an early image of the US Navy plane that came over me. It's an electronic warfare craft, EC3, I think it is. Came over me in an area where I was filming UFOs, and it's got US Navy on the side of it, although you can't see it there. Now, also, what is interesting in the early days when I put up this website, when I didn't quite know what was going on and dangerously assumed that I did, and not only that, became a bit dangerously obsessed with filming UFOs. Everything was a UFO, until it all kind of began, and it's taken me years to understand what's going on around me, and that's the early image of a US Navy plane in the area. Next one. But of course, what then happened was UFO contactees in the UK, and I'm one of them, and I make no apology for that. They are, we are targeted by a secret police in the UK that knows about UFOs and has its links into what Eisenhower warned about. And I will stress again my disgust and distaste at what I have witnessed and the fact that men in World War II gave their lives so that we could have freedom, and not a mind control circus like this. If you can imagine being targeted at 3 and 4 in the morning by gunfire, alarm clocks, how much salary they were on, that's kind of like the cost. Or not only that, I was targeted while being a carer, which was quite horrendous. So I'm having to cope with a lot. I really am having to cope with a lot, and it will provoke a reaction from the UFOs. That man in that photo is actually an actor, but however, he looks like the man who targeted me. He looks like the man who was using neural monitoring on me, and what I'm doing is I'm setting a backdrop to you of spiritual faith in adversity, which is what it's all about, an understanding of the greater cosmos, a connection to the divine. That is what it's all about. But that man was very dubious. He's probably retired now, but the thing is that when last time I was at, let's say, when I first started out in the conference scene, I would probably stand up, especially at Probe or whatever, and go on and on and on about what they did and what they didn't do. And you could feel the energy in the room go down, but that was not where it was at, ladies and gentlemen. Where it was at was contact with the UFOs and where it is leading. And I'm sincerely glad to say that that bastard, and he knows what he did, I'm sincerely glad to say that he hopefully reaches for the drinks cabinet at the sound of my name and the thought of me, because he was deploying mind control on me from an unknown source. You might say that you couldn't make it up, and that is correct. You could not make this up because it actually happened. This is the kind of unaccountable thing that goes on, and we had an incident. Just move to the next slide if you would, pal. Yeah, okay. So what happened is that I actually had an incident with him in a local pub, and I had been having psychic visions and dreams about him for quite a while as to who was doing this to me. I was, ladies and gentlemen, awoken all hours by gunfire, screams, so on, because they're testing mind-invasive technology, and there are some very important national security issues around such matters. But that's what was going on, and as we can see, this is my first black unmarked helicopter incident. Bearing in mind that we've had the UFO illuminate a TV antenna, bearing in mind that I started getting strange phone calls, the phone would ring, the phone would ring, I'd pick it up, and somebody on the end's going, "Shut up!" and putting the phone down on me. But that is an area of security and intelligence that is completely out of their depth with the situation that is going on, completely. And this is what happens, ladies and gentlemen. Our military is straining to understand what is going on around it, but there was no excuse for any of this. Anyway, that's the unmarked helicopter. It's bristling with camera gear and all kinds of things, and it flies over the height. Well, my mic, I'll stand up. It flies, ladies and gents, above that lamppost there in the picture there. It hovers over the road, so he's level with me. And he would do that if he's trying to do something called signal measurement analysis, or he's trying to analyse something. He hovers across the road, the cars are peeping the horns, the fishermen on the other side of the canal bank are going nuts because the fish are disturbed, and then he swings round, as you can see there. I got this analysed by Jane's Defence Weekly, of all people, who were very helpful, because they were surprised because that helicopter is not on issue to the RAF. It is on issue to Brazilian, American and Canadian forces, and it's a Fennec 555, which I understand from what James were telling me the RAF don't use. But of course, it's a pipe observation helicopter. Move along, citizens. Next. So what we have going on here, what we have got going on here is there has been in the past, which I've seriously studied, and I do a remote viewing course, a little remote viewing evening actually, and it goes down a storm with audiences all across the UK who are into this. But basically what we had going on was a black operation across a space-time continuum, And as we can see, there were several organisations and groups that started the remote viewing and psychic warfare operations. The UFO phenomena, contact with UFOs, disclosure with UFOs, all end up in this environment called the space-time continuum. And as we can see, there are quite a few names there. We've got Stargate, we've got Dragoon Absorb, we've got what was Centerlane, all the remote viewing programs that went on. We've now got Russell Targ on the scene. Russell Targ was somebody who set up the US psychic warfare program, Project Stargate. And it is Russell Targ that's now with Tom DeLong's team, who is talking about UFOs and all that was going on. Now, with these classified programs to do with psychic warfare, we can actually guarantee that there will be a communication across space-time with the minds of ETs and the minds of the people who are out there in the universe. And it is not a lie. We are being lied to. But these men, Joseph McMoneagle, I'll come to him later, a guy called Alexei Savin, David Morehouse and so on, will at some point in the proceedings have had interaction with UFOs, because why have radio astronomy when the mind is the first-class communication tool across the universe? Next one. So what happened with me? I decided, after all this crazy stuff was going on with the UFOs and all that kind of thing, it is true to say that I looked at something called the assessment by Staff Sergeant Robert Dean. Have you all heard of NATO assessment? No? Nobody? Yes, few of you. Okay. What it was, NATO did an assessment, probably in the 1970s, and Staff Sergeant Robert Dean stood up and told everyone that he was in the SHAPE headquarters and that NATO carried out an assessment on UFOs because the Russians thought that NATO were flying into their airspace and NATO thought the Russians were flying into their airspace, but it was in fact UFOs. And so I rang SHAPE headquarters to ask, do they have such a document called the assessment? The lady was very nice and said there was no such thing. With that, strange things started to go on, the phone started to become tapped, people turned up at the telephone line, all this kind of thing. What was interesting about what Robert Dean says was that, about the ETs, was this: they look like us and we look like them. And one of his famous quotes was the was that the admirals and the generals were all very alarmed because you could have one of these aliens walking down the White House in a corridor, and you would never know. You would literally never know. And I can assure you, in 40 years of dealing with them, that they're more like us than we would know. And they also have their own judiciary and infrastructures and so on and so forth. And we are being lied to for very nefarious reasons that I don't quite understand why, but I'm now understanding after all these years. So I was put through to my local council. I wanted to ring my local council in 2016 at the height of all this going on. And so I was put through, and all of a sudden, I heard somebody on the phone in an American accent go, hello, hello, oh, because they knew that my phone had been picked up. And the American accent quickly disappeared, and then I dialed the council number. I was put through to somebody in Germany who started just talking fluent German at me for some reason. And then I thought it was very odd, but this has a bearing. This really has a bearing on my situation, that I was mysteriously put through to Germany. It was quite baffling. Next one. Of course, what happens is, when you are esoterically targeted in some very bizarre way, for example, I told you about the incident in the pub. What happened was, this guy had been having psychic dreams about him, and he walks into the pub, and I know it's him, and I'm being targeted by MK Ultra technology, and he mentions something about what he is doing that only I would know. It was quite intentional. And then next minute I know his colleague that he's with, she looks at me backwards in a mirror and says, why isn't Anthony speaking to us? And he says, I don't know, come on, let's go. That was in about 98. So what we've got is some kind of unaccountable agency of individuals wandering around doing this stuff. And not only that, just recently, as part of the saga that I'm about to tell you, we had this happen. This phone number calls me on my mobile phone. Because I'm quite astute in the world of the esoteric, that number that came in is quite relevant to Genesis 46:33. Guy on the phone goes, can I speak to Pam? just like that, intentionally, quite intentional, and it's not the first time that I've received mysterious phone calls on my phone, but actually I was looking at the number because I knew the number means something, 4633, and that means, briefly, Genesis means the Pharaoh is asking, what is your occupation? That's what it was. And that's actually, just incidentally, that's actually from a Charlie Chaplin film. Evidence that that's a possible time traveller on a mobile phone. It's a classic on YouTube, do look it up. But that was that, the esoteric call from France that mimicked Genesis 4633, because the UFO phenomenon is biblically linked. It is linked to the demonic. It is linked to showing humanity a greater understanding and an elevation of consciousness, but it is also oppression. It is also control. And what I'm communicating with you is the serious game that we're in and the cost of what it's really like to be a close encounter experiencer in the UK. Without the, and you do get the chortle factor coming at you. And what I'm trying to say is what really goes on. I'm sure you get that. Just move to the next slide, Pam. So what happened is on the day of the actual, I was doing something for Channel 4, and this is really, I've had years of the UFOs coming in, going out, me being obsessed with them, me filming them in a field. We had one incident in a field where it was like gunfight at the OK Corral, whereby the UFO is stood in the field hovering, and I'm looking back at it, and it kind of like burns my leg in some bizarre way and flies off. What is an interesting observation to note is that some of these UFOs that turned up are simply dot of light UFOs, but what can also happen is other UFOs can turn up and chase them off. This is a very important observation from the UFO point of view, because it means that you're dealing with some sort of Cold War, which you are. There's some sort of Cold War going on with the UFOs that humanity appears blind to. But another element of humanity, which is stooped in the esoteric and the mystery schools, know what is going on, you see. So during, I was doing some work for Channel 4, and it is very interesting to note that this was near the Royal Institute of International Affairs. There's a contact experiencer called Alec Newald, who wrote a book called Co-Evolution, and within that book he was driving to Auckland in New Zealand. He then came off the road, it would appear, and thought he was dead, and he had two ghostly figures come towards him, but they weren't ghosts, they were actually aliens who explained to him that they were his nearest dimensional neighbours. And what happened was, he said that he came back 10 days later, didn't know where he was, 100 miles from where he should have been, and a few months later, or a few weeks later, there was a knock at the door. The knock at the door was from somebody alleged to be from the Australian Defence Agency, the Defence Intelligence Agency, and what Alex said, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, but he didn't know who they were until the guy showed his ID to him. I don't know whether that is correct, but what is interesting is that Alex Carr, and he does not know how they knew this, they wanted to take Alex Carr away because it had been subjected to high electrical voltage. He refused, and they ended up to be a right hoo-ha with Alec. Alec now lives a peaceful life in New Zealand after the ordeal that happened to it. But you see, there's a cost to it. When you have contact with ETs and UFOs, there is a cost to it. Just move to the next slide. So what happened was, during the filming for Channel 4, on that morning, for the first time ever, you've seen me show you that the UFOs are coming in. You've seen me show you that I had a first incident in '97, and then it all kind of went a bit bizarre. The UFOs coming in, me being targeted, strange phone calls, etc., etc. And then in about, I think it was about 2014 or 2015, something like that, I was going to film for Channel 4 near the Royal Institute of International Affairs. Not that I'm saying they're involved in any way, shape or form, but it's odd. Because I wasn't awoken, I was asleep at the time. And it ended up with me actually, how can I put it, seeing this spectacular vision that has been brought to life by my artist friend Lloyd Canning and a friend of mine called Peter Brennan, who did an excellent job, an excellent rendition of the Nordic ET that I saw. The hair length is absolutely spot on. And what he did, this guy, is he stood there and he was speaking to somebody like this. Now, I couldn't hear that, and you can't hear it, can you? But he was speaking to somebody. And the thing is that on the right there's a flashing signal of like an avatar symbol, and there are two clocks. One says 5 to 12, the other says 11:45, because this was at the height of the Ukraine crisis, where Russia and America were heating up with each other, and it is as if there was some sort of intervention going on by Nordic ETs into human affairs, which there is. Now, the thing is that you note the field. That will be very important in this presentation. Note that field. That's the thing. So keep an eye on that field. That's their triangles. That's their clocks. The vision was absolutely spectacular. The liaison. This man has saved my life twice. I'm very serious about it. He's actually intervened in my affairs twice because I've been going through hell, and we'll come to all that in a minute. Next slide, please, mate. You'll notice, by the way, that it says speaking to parties across a continuum, because it's like Project Stargate. Does anybody, by the way, anybody know Project Stargate? Yeah, okay, Project Stargate, the American remote viewing programs. This was like something on steroids, and as you can see, that's a journal, and the vision, that's my journal entry of what I saw, and Lloyd Canning brings it to life brilliantly with the clocks. The clocks are just exact as to what I saw. Never forget the vision. It will be one of a few more to come with it. Next slide, please, mate. That's the actual marvellous painting by Lloyd Canning in all its glory. Note the clocks, that's exactly what I saw, and he's done a splendid job. Note the field, very important. That field was in the vision as well. And there's a flashing light symbol, and 5 to 12. That flashing light symbol has the symbol of an angel, and it possibly means intervention in human affairs. These Nordic ETs are very smart, they're very clever. If you look at Chinese academia, you will discover it's widely acknowledged among Chinese academics that Nordics were in China. There is a rumour that they were in Ireland. There is a rumour in Zulu folklore that the Western European male was not the first person the Zulu people met. The first person the Zulu people met were the people from the stars above. The people who came in were Nordics. They were the first people in Zulu folklore who saw people who were different to them. Next slide, please, mate. So what happened is, this is the artist rendition by Paul. It's a good example of the ET appearing in the symbolic vision. This particular, you'll hear lots on the internet about the Nordics coming from here, the Nordics coming from there. I put my professional reputation on it that they come from Andromeda, and that they were explorers of the sea, and that man is a scientist, 32 Earth years of age. And they will return to me in November of last year, which they did after an important operation. I went through the gates of hell and back, ladies and gentlemen. I was looking after my mother, and I had hernia problems and all kinds of things going on. But because I managed to get help for my mother, and I was refusing to put her in a home because we'd been through enough hell with our father without me shoving my mother in a home. She didn't want to go in a home. So we battled to the bitter end with the Alzheimer's element and the dementia element. And then we had all this going on around me. It's a lot to deal with. And so he said he would return to me in November, and they did. The liaison with this man is present. He's around. And I would suggest that he is, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, I would suggest is the equivalent of like a provost marshal. He is part of something called command structure that they have. They have defence command, exploration command, from what he said. Now this is real, and it's unbelievable. Now you might think, some people, I don't think you do, but some people might go, oh, he's a fantasist. Oh, well, he's had a loss of his mother, so he's making this up just to, so that he can, because he can't cope with normal reality. And therefore he's just making this up so he can cope with it all. Not true. None of that is true. What is going on is real, and it's of very great cost, and we're being warned by them. For some reason there's a warning in this. These Nordic ETs do not mess around, and they're very real, as you will discover. Just to the next slide, mate. What happened was this... So I've told you that I've got liaison with Nordic aliens. I haven't told you that they're triangle craft are artificially intelligent, nor did I mention to you that the triangle craft in particular are actually, according to the Nordic ETs, dated gear and need upgrades. Their technology can be dated like human standards. So they're developing technology all the time, they're very real, and they are in our oceans, and they've got bases and so on. During a talk I gave in Watford, which was, I gave this talk in Watford talking about the Nordic ETs, and I thought to myself, you see, ladies and gentlemen, when you're under observation, you know you're under observation and you have an instinct for it. So I knew that I was being followed and I was being watched, and at this particular conference in Watford, where I was asked to speak, it was quite clear to me there was a lot of German speakers there. And my klaxons were going off in my head that I was being observed. I could just feel it. Don't know why. Did the talk, courtesy of Kerry Cassidy, who's been a wonderful support to me. Did the talk, went back home to look after my dear mother, because I put her in respite. I'm sat there on my computer one afternoon, the phone goes, private number. Guy on the other end of it, German accent. Told me his name was Klaus from the Defence Intelligence blah blah, part of the security of the Constitution of Germany. What got my back up was he rang it private number, and that got my back up because I found it utterly disrespectful that he'd ring on a private number and not reveal his number, nor tell me how he got my number, but there he was. And he proceeds to tell me this quite Johnny English type conversation that his office was above a cafe in Frankfurt. Hilariously, I suppose, if you're a secret agent, why would you tell someone where you were? But that's what he said. And then he epically said, you must look me up when you're in Frankfurt, which was unbelievable. He then proceeded, though, he had quite a panic on him. That was the word, a panic. And he started asking me questions about my interaction with Nordic extraterrestrials, about the fact that their craft were artificially intelligent, and what was it that I was not talking about my UFO contact experiences. There is an element to this that I cannot talk about for safety reasons and security reasons. And so I turned around and he said to me, you know, Tony, we're all friends now, we're all friends, the Cold War is over, and I'd like to know what it is that you're not talking about regarding UFOs. And then I turned around to him and said, listen mate, I don't care who you are, but if I deem it, after 40 years experience of something to be classified, I'm not going to tell you. You can be God Almighty, I'm not going to tell you. Yes, but Mr. Topping, we're all friends now. And do you believe that the royal family are reptilian shapeshifters? And I just went, no, I'm a fan of Prince Harry, I don't believe that at all. It doesn't matter what I believe, but at the time I didn't like the intrusion. And then it happened 3 days later. Phone goes again, another German guy on the end of it. And this time I put the phone down on him because I was frankly disgusted after what I'd been through that I was getting all this bullshit circus coming at me. The thing is that Germany has a very rich history of... Just move to the next slide if you would, pal. Germany has a very rich history of interaction with UFOs. If we... Maria Ozak, I think it's pronounced. She was one of the key players in the Fuel Society. I think I've got that right. Correct me if I'm wrong on which society she belonged to, ladies and gents. But basically, there is a situation that went on with her where she understood that her long hair could act as an antenna to pick up UFOs. But what the mystery is that she channeled some information to do with the UFO. This was sent to somebody very senior in the Third Reich who was an engineer who deemed the information to be quite accurate and quite correct. She mysteriously disappeared, did this lady. The rumour mill reports back to me, or somebody has reported back to me, that one of her relatives lives in Austria, and it would be interesting if I met her, from what I was told. But basically, the woman basically vanished. But the other thing that panicked the German guy, or didn't panic him, but the other things that were going on in Germany at the time that drew my attention to why this man might be panicking, is because there is, to the UFO element, a biblical element to it. There is a warning to do with nuclear issues and all that kind of thing. And that takes us to something called the Gulf Breeze 6, an excellent book called Unbroken Promises. For it was there that the men of a NSA listening station in Germany decided to go absent without leave, claiming an indication of war that was coming, and it panicked them. In fact, what they did is they went to the Gulf Breeze in Florida to film UFOs because that's where the UFOs were turning up and they were communicating with them. How the hell that happened, how they communicated with them, I'm not too sure, but the situation was that is what had gone on, and it appeared that it had changed their lives. Any guys and girls who were involved in the remote viewing program, including the Russians, the Russian remote viewing program known as New Cosmology, these people have great spiritual realizations, as did I. It's as if we are being shown esoterically the way forward. But this guy from Germany, he was panicking and he wanted to know all about the Nordic triangles and the artificial intelligence, and I sent him on his way. But I have reason to suspect that there was something far bigger going on in Germany involving the UFOs that he wasn't talking about. I've also reason to suspect that he may have had lie detector software on the other end of the phone, just to sound me out and see what I was all about. There is no investment in lying. People spot a bullshitter a mile away. I'm just telling it like it is, hence me being referred to sometimes as a UFO journalist. I'm just telling my experiences exactly as they happened, as a man who's trying to piece together what has gone on with me. Next slide, please. So what we're moving to is the Russians, and they had a unit called Troop 10,003. And Joseph McMoneagle was one of the top US military remote viewers. He held the medal, the US Congressional Medal of Honor, and he also had he was remote viewing Russian submarine bases and all that kind of thing. During the history of America's psychic remote viewing courses or operations, there was one man who was a remote viewer called Pat Price, a policeman, former policeman. He was that good at remote viewing, he drew via psychic subconscious means a Russian submarine base that was being built. It is rumoured that the KGB got him. There's a friend of mine who worked in MI6, well, not a friend but an associate, worked in MI6 who also did remote viewing as well, and was very shocked because things happened during the Falklands War where she was telling me that she was remote viewing a target, which was the sinking of the Belgrano. She saw it first, and what shocked her was the sailor in the water was looking up at her before he drowned, and that shook her up very deeply. Even to this day, my friend who lives I think in Wales actually, she's still got the cameras, the dogs, the fence, because the KGB old guard are still active. But yet, what is bizarre is that the CIA helped fund Russia's remote viewing program. There's a small reference to it. And Joseph McMoneagle pointed me to this man. I don't know whether that's him in the photo. I think that might be Alexei Savin, I'm not too sure. But basically, you will note the Russian remote viewers and that drawing of a female extraterrestrial. You see, ladies and gentlemen, Alexei Savin and his unit, Troop 10,003, he believed that women were the best remote viewers. He used women only, and he made sure with these women that they could zone in on things and remote view correctly with certain techniques. And the thing about it is that he used women because they had intuition. He says in an interview to Pravda that his remote viewing team could remote view things and were in communication with extraterrestrials who was given, and the extraterrestrials were only giving medical information only. They were not giving military information. And he had a site called New Cosmology, and as we can see, he did this operation to do with influencing. The American equivalent of remote psychic influencing is known as Dragoon Absorb. These guys call it walk-in mind operations. And if you are psychic enough, as I have been, and still am, I suppose at some level now, but if you are psychic enough to be powerful enough to manipulate power, you're going to get a recoil, a real recoil from a force that overrules this world that people do not see, that has been around us for centuries, and it must be treated with respect. So we've gone through the story of me being targeted, we've gone through the story of my mother possibly being targeted, of my father having mysterious goings on. My mother especially became a point of moral outrage actually, but that's another story. But this technology is real, ladies and gentlemen. The targeting technology, the mind control, it's all real. And we seem to be able to develop this wonderful technology to kill, this wonderful technology to invade the human mind in the most nastiest of ways. But somehow, as the aliens have pointed out, we can't seem to get on top of plastic contaminating our oceans. We can't seem to get on top of 1,001 matters, and we've got homeless on the streets and all that kind of thing. And there is a very ethic and moral, spiritual background to these ETs who are visiting. Not all of them are hostile, but some are unfriendly towards mankind. It can happen. So we've just moved to the next slide. We've gone through the Russian remote viewing program. And what happens is with me, that's me, to give you an example, I wouldn't call it an agenda, but we're just going to get now into the kind of the alien stuff. This here is a plasma-type UFO, and the findings are basically omitted. It is a new science. There is a think tank in India, or rather there was a think tank in India, the equivalent of a Majestic 12, who decided to dump some of its information on the India Daily. Blink and you'd miss it, but it was fascinating stuff. And there was an indication that these plasma-type UFOs make minor sonic booms when they turn up. This Indian kind of report believed that the plasma was very real, and they are plasma. There is allegedly meant to be plasma life in the universe, but they've kept that covered up as well. And that's a very fine shot of the UFO. That's a plasma-type UFO taken near Holy Island, just as I'm about to give a talk like I am doing tonight. The origins of that plasma-type UFO are absolutely fascinating and form part of my contact story. We'll just move to the next slide, thank you. What we've got going on here is something called Project Hesdalen in Norway. In Norway, it would appear there was flashing lights everywhere, strange lights that were in the sky, and the Norwegian government wanted to do research on it. The British government have done something called Project Condign, or UAP, in Air Defence Region 2, as it's actually known. What they were monitoring was plasma UFOs. Luis Elizondo, in his talk to MUFON, talks about the DIA. He talked about all the research they'd done. Not once did they mention contact with aliens. Not once did they mention that extraterrestrials exist. They dare not, for some reason. But there you go. But I'm one of these individuals who's had this go on. That is typical. That what I'd like to talk about, and I'll talk about later, is that is a triangle UFO, lower right, similar to something I attempted to film over the Marine Lake. They're gone in a few seconds, all part of the saga of contact. We're going to, I think we aim to finish in 3/4 of an hour, ladies and gentlemen, and then we move to Q&A. You just move to the next slide. Thanks, mate. And what happened is that I put in an appearance on the One Show for the BBC last year, and that's when we had the call from Germany and all that carry on. And this guy, it was interesting when the One Show turned up, because I said, oh, say I, you need to put the findings of this guy on. I need to talk about him. Very important. Oh, we're not interested in that. No. And it's as if, I'm not saying that there is an agenda, but it is as if they wanted it omitted, they didn't want anything that was truthful included. But this guy stuck his neck out. He's Mr. Massimo. He is an astrophysicist from Italy. He said this about these lights and about the UFO that you just saw that I filmed at Holy Island. It was this. The conclusions are there are 95% are thermal plasma, 5% are solid objects under intelligent control, which would suggest a higher dimension. I learned before my mother died what they were all about. I did learn. Just move to the next slide. Thank you. And this is what the findings that they didn't wish this to be shown, but basically the findings of the plasma UFOs were this: their thermal temperature is constant. Illumination is due to an increase of radiating area. I have witnessed these UFOs, these type of UFOs, suddenly disappear away from air traffic. They're under intelligent control and they will be respectful around air traffic. One particular instance saw a UFO just suddenly disappear. Military helicopter it was flying around, it disappeared and then reappeared when the helicopter had gone. And there are many components that vibrate around the common centre. The scientists' findings was quite simply that they appeared to be under intelligent control and they would move out the way of aircraft if they saw them. And he believed, more importantly, if you just move to the next slide, Tom. He believed, more importantly, that there was a situation going on where some sort of advanced ET civilization, and he said this in public, could control plasma like we could control DNA. And there has been a number of agencies around going on. There has been a number of agencies that have been out there. We've all heard of MJ12, except there was something called the UFO Air War of 1950, where UFOs were shooting at American aircraft, and the American government wanted to know why. rather comically, at the height of all this, Winston Churchill wrote to the US President, and I think the US President responded and went, "Oh, Winston, there's nothing to worry about, don't worry about it. No, there's nothing in this." Meanwhile, in the Washington Post, there was recruitment adverts for anti-aircraft batteries, there was an increase in military recruits, and also Timothy Good, in one of his books, reported in the 1950s a mysterious increase in air accidents. They couldn't understand why this was going on. That there is a Starfire. I think it's a Starfire, yes it is. It's a Starfire jet fighter. They were using those jet fighters against the UFOs that were coming in via space-time. The Americans wanted to know why the UFOs were shooting at their aircraft, and what would happen is that aircraft there was capable of firing 12 rockets in one go at a UFO, hence the term by the book Frank Frashino, "shoot them down." A Korean air ace reported in the book, rather darkly comically, that it was something out of Roadrunner and Coyote, whereby Roadrunner is kind of like in the middle of a cliff, he looks down, suddenly realises he's in thin air and falls. According to the testimony of this Korean air ace, the UFO turned up, it ripped off the wings, ripped off the undercarriage, ripped off the canopy, and this Korean air ace says that all he had in midair was his control stick and control panel and nothing else. He was lucky to be alive, he said, and he kind of like got the parachute and safely went on his way. What happened was, in response to this, the Americans, back in the early days, they developed Project Stargate in response to Czechoslovakia's psychic warfare. They knew, the Americans, that Czechoslovakia had developed military psychics during the Cold War, and they had to counter that. So the Americans also formed an agency called the Collins Elite. It's called the Collins Elite after a district in New York, and a vicar that they went to see who specialised in the demonic, because they are a Christian agency. And they believe that there is a demonic component to UFOs. Yes, there is, but not in the way we would think. When Alec Newworld was abducted in co-evolution, he writes that the aliens said to him that there was a form of life that ruled the planet, that had to be respected. And this UFO-type invasion ties in with our collective consciousness. We are being manipulated as nations. It's very odd, ladies and gentlemen, that the American psychic warfare people know about all this, that the Russian psychic warfare do. The Americans funded the Russian psychic warfare, but yet we're still jostling for war. We're still warmongering. Russia, America, they're all still warmongering, because nations are manipulated. And as soon as mankind, via the intervention, I think, extraterrestrial affairs, extraterrestrials interfering in the affairs of man, I think by the time we realise that we are being manipulated, it would hopefully make the world a better place. But that was the UFO air war, and the Collins Elite were a very specialist agency, still in existence today, investigating the demonic component regarding UFOs. Just move to the next slide. What happened is that Alec Newell's book Co-Evolution, that there is known as an elder. There was also Marishi and Xena 5, and they seemingly were all hybrid aliens, but that there is an elder. And according to Alec's book, Co-Evolution, one of the conclusions, a very important conclusion drawn by the aliens, was the fact that these are dimensional aliens. There is a reverse side to us. We are radiating, it appears, in another dimension. The fact of the matter is, some of our most highly classified military research, so they said, is not telling us that they are on the reverse side of matter. They are on like a reverse wavelength of matter and electrons and so on that form their world. But the most important thing that they said to Alec was this, that the world is ruled by a dark force and it should be treated with respect. And I collided with this about 3 years ago, where it came at me because I'm a man who's had unusual goings on, and I am not as I appear to be. I do not make any, sweeping kind of grandiose remarks about my abilities, because I'm exhausted with it all. I don't, but it happened where this thing that overrules our planet came to visit me, and you treat it with respect, and it was hair-raising. It was very frightening. It was like something out of Lord of the Rings, where the horsemen are after the hobbit, that kind of thing. But because you've got higher celestial intelligence at work, the affairs and the future of man appear to be navigated whether such a force would like it or not. And that was a very important remark that was said by the alien. There was an indication as well by the aliens that time travel does exist and is very real, but they tended to keep quiet about that. And that's a typical craft that Alec drew there. He was targeted, as I say, by what he believed to be the Royal Institute of International Affairs and other organisations. Once again, I indicate that that is hearsay, so I have no idea. But his car was confiscated, as I said earlier. That's a typical drawing of what Alec drew of an elder alien in another dimension. And they were trying to get back to Earth because their planet was going wrong, was going horribly wrong. What these aliens did is that it appeared that they had, with the technology that they had, they shifted their planet into another dimension. During my time of looking at stuff on the India Daily from this so-called think tank, there was an article that they had dumped in the India Daily that said that it was mathematically possible that you could shift the planet into another dimension. The maths said it could be done. Just a very interesting observation. Just move to the next slide, thanks mate. So what we're getting from these UFOs is a theme of communication, illumination of a TV antenna, manoeuvring in the skies above as if with technology that we don't possess. For example, here's a very fine example of unusual flight movement in the area where that US Navy plane turned up. As we can see there, and I'll probably play the clip at the end of the presentation, there's a small dot of light that comes in from the left. It rotates, and what it does is it rotates 360 degrees like that around the triangle craft and then flies off at speed. There's a possibility that it is attached to the craft, it's some sort of probe, but as Jason has rightly seen there, that's a triangle craft. When you look top right there, the picture looks like similar to the UFO that illuminated a TV antenna. And in the years ahead, I learned who they were, and the conversation and dialogue is very kindergarten with them, but it's an honour to get to know them, it really is. But the cover-up is there, and I repeatedly am disappointed that men died on the beaches of D-Day just so that this circus could oppress, just so that we were not told the truth about what is going on. Just move to the next slide then. This is another theme of communication. So we've got TV antenna illuminated by the UFO, and that's my ham radio antenna. And what happens is I'm a radio ham, that's my HF radio antenna, and the UFO has come in over the garden, and it has actually morphed itself and flown straight through the antenna and out the other side again and moved on. There's a possible evidence of technology being used, but the theme is antenna. The theme is communicating across a time continuum. The theme is clocks, triangles, the field that we saw earlier. Very important, the field. Just make a note of that. And there it is again. We've got a theme of communication, a theme of aerodynamic manoeuvring that our technology does not possess. They are present in the skies above. They're very real. Next slide, please. And of course we have a showing of presence. This is actually one of my favourite ones. What we've got here is, during the course of me looking after my mother, bless her, when she was coping with what she had to deal with, and when I was coping, that was appearing all the time. I believe that to be a UAV. I believe it to be a Reaper drone. There was somewhere on my Facebook page that it's a jet airliner. It isn't. It's a lot smaller than that, and it's not far away from me. I'm in the garden. That's only a few thousand feet off me. But note, we did analysis. We ran analysis, me and Jason, on this to discover an elongated object at great speed, upper right. It comes past it at great speed. In fact, when we slow the film footage down, the VLC player on its slowest mode can't even keep up with it. Just cannot keep up with it. And here's an interesting question, I think, that springs to mind, and it is this. What do you think of this remark during the course of my experiences? That such, I'm told, at 3 in the morning, that I was awoken, that they can do England to America in 10 minutes and Antarctica in 20 minutes. Isn't that fascinating? Do you not think? Yeah? Do you think that's fascinating? What is wrong with that remark? Can anybody guess? I've just said this to you. No, not evidence. No, it's not evidence. No, you're missing the point. No, it's not to do with evidence. The evidence is all around us. The evidence is all around us elsewhere on the internet. Not about evidence, no. I said very carefully, I was awoken at 3 in the morning by somebody telling me this. And this is the thing, there's an ethical issue around it, an ethical issue around this. It's unethical what is going on, and it raises serious causes for concern as to what exactly is going on. Do you get my drift? But we are so, the point I'm making is sometimes we can be so self-obsessed and absorbed with what is going on around us that we miss the point of the reality, I think, of what is going on around us. Oddly enough, there is an indication to me that that elongated object is from bases in the Pacific Ocean, they told me. Just move to the next slide. This is over, so there's the elongated object there, great speed, and I mean great speed, and Jason's done a good job of actually capturing it there, as we can see. Just move to the next one. That's actually then the same type of object taken in the Pacific, which correlates with remarks made during the course of my experiences that they are coming specifically from the Pacific. The mystery is why, and the mystery that eludes me constantly is why is this happening to me? Who am I? What's going on? Is it more than one person that's getting this data? And it would appear it is. Tonight I was informed of a similar researcher who's having similar experiences. Somebody else has come up to me having similar experiences because they're signalling across a collective consciousness. That's what seems to be going on. That is the UFO taken in the Pacific, and one of the presidents of one of the Pacific islands voiced his concern that both Russia, America, Britain and even France actually know that UFOs are out there in his Pacific island, and he's getting quite sick and tired of it all. That was, I've forgotten his name, but he was the president of one of the islands in the South Pacific, and that correlates. If you go back to the previous slide, can you see, and then forward to the next one, thank you very much. Can you see what I'm saying? So we've got something that's at great speed, that's flying around, that really, on purpose, passed a military UAV, and it did it quite intentionally, because it's signalling. They are signalling, they're wanting communication, and that seems to be how it's developing. Just move to the next slide there, mate. That's actually the torpedo UFO that I also saw, although I didn't film that, but that's an example of one that came over. That was seen all over the UK. It also came into my garden as well, across my garden at speed. Just couldn't quite catch it on camera. Next slide. So the military appear. This is the question. Here he is again, the man I had interaction with, and the military appear. And the question is why. I've had numerous military-related incidents. There was one incident in 2001, and I'm trying to locate the pilots of the craft in question. And what happened was, at the height of, in 2001, I was being targeted. I was having a bloody hard time of it, and I had a responsible job, a very responsible job at that time. And I was at the end of my tether, and one evening I went to the riverbank on a winter's night in 2001, January, according to my journals, and what was going on there was quite interesting because I'm looking out across the river, and there are tornado jets on exercise with the RAF Church Fenton, or somewhere around there, some airbase. A tornado flies over me and flashes his lights at me, as if to say, are you okay? Because a tornado has very low speed handling. It can slow itself down quite dramatically, actually. It can have low speed handling capability. Next minute I know that the other aircraft that's further in the field puts his afterburners on and goes like hell down the field. Only, just move to the next slide, pal, thank you. Only to discover that the UFO, let me just demonstrate, what you've got is the RAF tornado like this, and the UFO flying alongside it like this, flying alongside it, so they're flying together. It was quite a sight to see, and I'm still to this day trying to trace the pilot involved, because it's as if one Air Force was signalling to another Air Force, and this is where we come to the field, and the vision that I had, and that field. And that field was the cause over my town of one of the biggest air operational exercises I have ever seen in our area. It also involved the Luftwaffe, and they were from Germany, and they were clocking that field. That very field where I had the vision, that very field where there has been UFO activity, they were there. And they were having aerial dogfights in the sky, and there was Typhoon jets, and then there was this. Just move to the other slide, mate. There was this that appeared. This is 683 Squadron, Special Aviation Wing, that came all over the town. It's bristling with antenna, and that was coming in everywhere. and they were doing short takeoff and landing at Bern Aerodrome as a military exercise. The place was alive with aircraft. Just move to the next one, mate. And what's happening here is this guy passes my house approximately 5 times and waves at me. It was unbelievable, and that's the Hercules. He's going one way, then he goes the other way. What he's doing is he's got visual from where he is on the very field where I had spotted the UFOs. For all I know, and there's a distinct possibility there had been UFO activity, because these UFOs are capable of intentionally illuminating our radar systems if they wish, and they're also capable of being cloaked as well. And that Hercules craft is flying around. He's waved at me, he's passed 7 times. I contact Jason, I said, Jason, have a look at this Hercules. I bet it is being shadowed by a UFO. Next slide. Boom. There's a UFO that's actually shadowing that Hercules. That Hercules is on approach, and what they're doing is short takeoff and land practice during the air operation over our town. And if we just move to the next slide, I think you'll find that Jason's done a very good job there in illuminating the UFO there. He's put a frame, a different filter on it. Move to the next one, cheers pal. And that's the full analysis of it. Looks similar to a plasma type UFO. So therefore, our Air Force is technically being shadowed by another Air Force. It's quite intentional, it's about communication, and that Hercules is being shadowed. And you have got, as I said, tornado jets going around. You've got the Luftwaffe there in tornado jets flying about. You might have F-16s flying around as well. It is interesting to note the Belgian UFO triangle flap in the 90s, where their Air General Wilfred de Broer was saying in public that his F-16 fighters were tracking aircraft that were not of this world. He said that publicly. And there is some classic things of these triangle craft travelling to speeds of Mach 12 and stopping dead, literally dead stop. And there's such a thing as well in the India Daily that I was reading about not only an arms race, but a secret race called flash travel. The secret technology behind speed without acceleration is quite a kind of thing that's going on behind the scenes as well at the moment, just for your interest. Anyway, let's move on to the next slide, thank you. So what happens is that when you are a contact experiencer, you will have communications with extraterrestrials, and it doesn't happen like they say it happens with radio telescopes and communicating like they do. It happens in something called the space-time continuum. It joins space and time into a single idea, as we can see. And what happens is, with me and others, is that ET encounters are heard and seen in time. Time is an element. Time is collapsed. Time travel with it is quite real at a very rudimentary level. It's not as H.G. Wells as you might think, but it's quite real. Just move to the next one. Cheers, mate. And what's happening here is that we've got, via time continuum, in my professional opinion, an alien disclosure to mankind. What's happening is it would appear that we currently are not ready to quite handle it, but it would appear that we are bypassing the channels of the usual cover-up that is going on, and the governments in the years ahead that we have elected will possibly be learning from them and will be in communication with them. Now I just need 3 volunteers from the audience, please, if you wouldn't mind, just to demonstrate something to you, if you wouldn't mind. Could we just have 3 people up at the front? Is that all right? Anybody at all? That would be great. Come on, come on. Just 3 of you, that's all I need. Come on, anyone? Anybody help? Help? 3 at the front. I'm not going to do it. It's just to demonstrate something to you, to do with the delivery of information. Nobody has to do anything other than just stand there. That's the thing. Brave men, thank you. Oh, and thank you. Oh, especially you. In fact, young lady, you can go there and be the year 2140, yeah? So you stand there, okay, and let's imagine that this fine fella here is me. And let's imagine that this guy here has observed my work in the year 2019, and he's in the year, she's in the year 21 whatever, and she's observed my work in 2019 and researched it only to discover that it is a Yasmat paradox, in that you, this UFO group, our work has caused a resonance in time, a signal in time. We are signalling, they are signalling for some reason at this moment in time that they are here and they are there. Further down the line in the years ahead, it would appear that we grasp an understanding of them. But currently at the moment, in terms of time travel, because it's a space-time continuum, that means that this man, who is from another universe, is not bound by the rules of time and can communicate across a time continuum with information. It also means that me in the year 2019, her in the year 2140, the time continuum is collapsed so that time merges, and therefore 2019 talks to 2140 quite easily as if on radio communication. And that's the technology that they have developed, and it's crucial. And within that technology, this person in 2140, because of the work that has been going on, now communicates with Mr. Nordic, who starts disclosing information in a way that we can understand. So you're talking in disclosure in a 100-year time frame kind of situation. You won't see that on the internet. That's learnt firsthand from my own experiences. You can make of that what you will. But basically, time is collapsed, and the disclosure will only go at a pace we can handle. I'm estimating a disclosure at a rate of about 130 years with these beings. It goes on, it's very real, hence it's known as the Yazmat paradox. Thank you very much, ladies and gents. Give them a round of applause. So, as you can see, it just explains the nature of time travel, the nature of communication with extraterrestrials, the involvement of demonic forces. Mankind in the next millennium is going to have his work cut out to be on the path of realisation and of spiritual understanding, I do believe. Just go to the next slide, pal, thank you. Back one. Cheers, mate. And that there is an extraordinary vision that happened to me. Now, make of it what you will. Even I'm taken back by it, but basically that is a very good drawing of an extraterrestrial done by a police officer in Dallas. Very Nordic, very blonde, very like the facial structure is exactly like the lady I saw in '97. And that there, because of a demonstration of the time continuum collapse, when I said that that year, 2150, can communicate with this year in 2019, I've created a Yazmatic paradox whereby when they see this in 2150, they will want to come back in time and find out what's going on. The Yazmat paradox means that somehow you have created this situation, and that's what the ETs meant. Yazmat. You sow, you reap. That's what it means. It's Sanskrit. The guy who phoned me from Germany, he knew Sanskrit as well. It's a Sanskrit term. The aliens know Sanskrit. And that's kind of like a very dramatic drawing from Niels Giddy's Ward, who did an excellent job, and I recommend him come here as a speaker. But he did that drawing for me of what I saw about an event that may or may not happen in the future regarding UFO disclosure and communication with UFOs. Make of that what you will. I'm just sharing it as a vision to you. Just move to the next slide, thank you. But what happens to a UFO contact experiencer is this. There are some things that go on what you're not told. You can cross the bridge into their world forward from current time, and therefore you have time travel. So the guy who communicated with me is in a different year, he's light years ahead of me, he's in a position like in a barrage balloon to see the future. He's in that position, and you kind of like feel displaced. There's a thing in the New Age movement about past life, but in some cases you're dealing with your future life, where in a time continuum the future incarnation of you is looking back at you, which can be very strange. But with a contact experiencer, you can have bizarre time displacement where you feel you're in this year, but you're actually elsewhere in the future. It's a very bizarre thing. These are the things that can happen that we're not told about. And the thing is, what is even more aggravating sometimes is that the information from the ETs is drip, drip, drip. It's kind of like not at a level you can grasp. It's constantly eluding you, but yet sometimes it is best that you don't know too much. It really is. Next slide, please. And what happened to me at the height of looking after my mother was that on this particular day, I had a situation go on where I had what appeared to be flu and I couldn't look after her. And how the hell she didn't get it, I've no idea, but I said, Mother, I've got to go to bed. I'm not feeling right, I'm unwell. And we couldn't get care cover, and I was not well. And I ended up going to bed, and I ended up laying on the bed going delirious with my temperature, and I started hallucinating. Oh, he's hallucinating. Oh, well, that means he's obviously his hallucinations has made that up. No, it's more precise than that. We've seen the aerial photographs of them coming in. We've seen the communication. We've seen the military stuff go on. I've had the strange events happen. It's more precise than that. You couldn't make it up. I'm delirious on the bed. I'm not well. I fall asleep. My dear mother was at that level. She was just coping with everything, and I could just leave her for an hour or so. Next minute I know there's this, I'm asleep, and as I say, it's like a space-time continuum. There's a knock at the door, and he is stood there. It was bizarre. And he said, hello, Tony, to me. Next minute I know there's a wah, wah, wah sound as if power is being applied to a craft, and I'm whisked off to the Ribblehead Valley area, where the Ribblehead Viaduct is. I distinctly remember, ladies and gentlemen, that man stood with me looking up at the structure and going, Tony, that is a magnificent structure. A few months previously there was UFO sightings in the Ribblehead Viaduct area. What he was actually doing, although I saw the Ribblehead UFO, although I saw the Ribblehead Viaduct as a possibility that it was a visual metaphor, and the fact was, I was aboard his craft having medical attention. He's clearly indicated to me in the communication that spanned a few years now, on and off, very kindergarten. At one point he did indicate to me that he was concerned that if he really revealed himself to me, I'd have blood pressure problems, and his words were, I'd have to go in the sick bay of his craft. Now, you've got to think, being my own critique, is somebody illegally experimenting with artificial reality on me, or is this true? I believe it to be fully true, and my camera will not lie in the weeks ahead where I film them again. I was put back in the room, 3 hours had elapsed, my mother was in order, and mysteriously after a few hours I was completely healed of my fever, and I was able to look after her, and there would be a second intervention that happened medically with them as well. Let's move to the next slide now. So this disappeared over the Ribblehead Viaduct. Make of it what you will. I just find it very strange. I should have really put in the slides showing of the UFOs that were seen near the Ribblehead Viaduct that have been filmed that are like the plasma UFOs as well. The presence is here. They are Nordic ET, they are present, there is a reason for it. Next slide, please. So what we got going on is back to this lady again. And at the height of trying to look after my mother, who has Alzheimer's disease, I'm trying to cope with a lot. We've got care help coming in, but I believe I am being targeted, and I believe that my mother was targeted as well. And what happened was that this woman appeared again, told me it was a number of years, but what fascinates me is that she was morally outraged by what you were seeing. So basically you're dealing with an ET that is coming in over the house, that is pissed off with what she's seeing, really pissed off with it. She knows far more obviously than what I know, but she is the source who told me the targeting and where it was coming from, which I cannot talk about. But they are akin to tall whites. If you've read Charles, oh my word, does anybody know his name? Millennial Hospitality. Charles, forgotten his name. Anyway, he wrote this book called Millennial Hospitality about the race, kind of like in America, the secret aliens in America who were akin to tall whites. That's what she looks like. And she came in and indicated to me, just move to the next slide, she indicated to me that she was maritime alien. She came from the oceans, but not our oceans, oceans from another universe. And there's an interesting thing on a chat channel, I think it's called 4Channel or 4Tran or something like that. But there's an interesting chat that went on there, allegedly about an alien who was communicating on that forum. And what she was communicating was the fact that she was lost. She'd lost the bearings with her craft and she didn't know where she was. She stuck up a photo of herself, but what was more important was she stuck up a photo of her world, so it is alleged, which was very snow-covered, a bit like Antarctica, and that was the visions I was seeing as well. And that's her. That's actually her at 6 o'clock in the morning, coming in, having a look at me, saying hello. I've got the clip of it, and that it's also in that area where the jets were regularly flying around. There were Typhoon jets over the estate often. The roar of jets when they appeared would often come. They are there communicating and watching over me. And to be frank, I am still baffled and haven't quite got an answer that I'm going to go in. All these experiences, not only that, they are UFOs, as you can see. It's quite spectacular, yet still no intervention happened on my mother and I lost her, and I can't get my head around that to this day. I'll be honest with you, I can't. And the loss of my mother traumatised me. I was traumatised by it. She died, it was just horrendous. Carry on. But this alien lady, for some reason, was keeping an eye on me and was morally outraged about what was happening because I was being targeted and still am. I have to be careful. I have to be careful what I say. But basically, that was what's going on, and that's her at 6 a.m. Jason's done a good job. Plasma-type UFO comes in from our oceans. There she is. Just go to the next slide, pal. Thank you. And of course, in November, I went for an operation at York District Hospital. If you'd have seen me a few months ago, I was trying to look after my mother. I did tattoo fixes for Channel 4, E4, and you could see it there. And if you can see, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a beer barrel belly out here and a hernia, an umbilical hernia that's sticking out like a sore thumb. It was absolutely unbelievable. And I'm trying to look after my mother all at the same time, and eventually I moved to Southport, and then I had to go back to York District Hospital for an operation, a hernia operation, which they did a very good job of. But I've got to say, listen, I'm just trying to communicate what goes on when you're a contact experiencer, because you can be absolutely baffled by it all. And I know that after I was recovering from my operation, I know that I was targeted around about 1, 2 in the morning. I started getting hit. And I am thinking to myself, ladies and gentlemen, I am not going to survive. I think I'm not going to make it. I felt that my life was in danger with it all, but I was being targeted after this operation. They were not letting me rest. It is interesting to note that, like they said, they returned in November, as stated, and they intervened once again with the vision of that woman there, who appeared to be something to do with their law and their enforcement of law, and had a Hebrew-sounding name. I got a first name, which was Izza, but then I didn't get the surname, which was very Hebrew-sounding and very nice-sounding name, and I didn't get that. But it was like my awareness was being altered to like as if the cosmos itself was in my head. It was quite bizarre, but she revealed who she was. And she revealed that many of the things that had been going on that I had no conscious knowledge of, but had been happening subliminally. And once again, they saved my life. True story, they saved my life. Just move to the next slide there, mate. And of course, you see this technology is all around us. We've discussed the technology. This is courtesy of Linda Howe. We've discussed the technology of illuminating a TV antenna. We've discussed the technology of flight maneuverability like we don't have, of UFOs coming in at tremendous speed. And this is another example of it in Brazil. This guy, yes, he's been discredited, but I believe the story to be correct. And what you've got there is a nylon sheet. And it's an abduction by abduction. He claims that he's been taken by Nordic extraterrestrials, by quite... If you look at South America and Peru, if you ask anyone in Peru in a village somewhere and go, where are the aliens? They'll go, over there. There's a famous story, which you might not have heard of a garage in Ladakh in India. There is a claim by the owner of that garage that his television set suddenly came on, and a woman speaking Urdu who looked alien indicated that they would be flying around the area. Please don't be disturbed by them, thank you very much. And comically, that's how it goes in those countries, very comical. But what happened is, as you can see, that's an imprint of him on the bed sheet. But then up above, what you don't see is kind of like 2 foot forward of an imprint of him on the ceiling. And according to him, that's where they've lifted him up and forward. They were telling him with these Nordics that they have a base up in the hills, in the mountains, and they're monitoring environmental issues. But this is what is fascinating. This is an example of heat technology. What's happening is, you can see the fibres there, ladies and gentlemen. Some are plain, some are scorched. What's happening is, it would appear, is that the heating technology is something that we don't have, whereby one fibre has been illuminated by very high temperature, and the fibre next to it has been illuminated by very cold temperature. Precision heating. Each one, precision, a technology that we do not possess. So you've got this constant theme of technology being displayed to us, this constant presence of them, leading us away perhaps from conflict, I do believe. Just go to the next slide now. That's what I believe is going on. And of course, you see, I lost my mother, and it was not good. The poor girl, Alzheimer's eventually got her and shut her down, and it was not nice. And to see your mother in the hospital was not nice either. And I ended up having to move to Southport, and I was suffering severe fatigue. There was a couple of times in the afternoon where I'd literally have to collapse on the bed with fatigue. I went to the doctors, got some medical advice, but it was still going on. And I had a chat with a woman in the US, who I will call her codename Delta, because her mother worked for NASA, and she claims to be a contact experiencer. And what's happening there, ladies and gentlemen, is that's like a UFO that I filmed at the Marine Lake. However, the other one is a beautiful emerald green UFO that's in Southport there, that came in from nowhere, gracefully appeared, hovered, looked at me, went left, went right, and then silently flew off at speed. It is odd to note that this lady, codenamed Delta, said that she was a contact experiencer, and she would have a word with the ETs that she is communicating with. And they turned up. A beautiful emerald green alien woman turned up, and over the Marine Lake, when that UFO came over me, some bizarre adjustment happened to me so that I wasn't exhausted anymore. And the explanation I got from them was, all because we are aliens and have technology, we sometimes do not know all that is going on. But there was a dramatic escalation in my protection from the targeting, because you see, as a contact experiencer, you've got to be very careful with what you say, what you do. You're being monitored by nefarious forces, so you've got to be careful. But that's an excellent example, the one on the left. That's the photo I took of a beautiful emerald green UFO that came in over Southport. The last communication from them was an indication to me that I would film them. I know where, I don't know when, and I know what the UFO craft will look like, similar to the TV antenna one, where I dreamt about it and knew exactly what it looked like before it appeared. So this is the story of my life today with the UFOs. Just move to the next slide. Cheers, man. And as we can see, it's just repeated again, I do beg your pardon. But that's, yeah, so that's it was taken recently. It's green emerald, beautiful one, absolutely gorgeous it was. It came in, hovered, didn't make a sound. Next slide, pal. So what we can see is a quick estimate of the situation in perhaps closing this, ladies and gentlemen. We can see there's some exaggerated claims on the internet that this technology is thousands of years ahead. Well, according to them, it's 700 to 800 years ahead of us. And there are continual attempts at communication from them. I do believe that the Royal Air Force is being signalled to by them for some reason. And there is a shadowing of our military by UFOs. There is, of course, a religious understanding of a higher intelligence known as the higher celestial. There's a nuclear warning from them, from the UFOs. Attempt at communication. And certain ET groups are concerned, reference the abduction of human beings. It's a law issue among them. Believe me, it's an issue. An ethical and moral issue regarding what is happening with humanity. Because what is not known is that these ETs, we look like them, they look like us, and they mimic our infrastructure, or rather, we mimic their infrastructure. So they have judiciary, they have technical infrastructure like us, it's all present, and military infrastructure as well. Just move to the next slide, pal. And you see, just in closing this lecture, we see that what happens 84 miles out of northwest of Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. That is very nefarious, and I'll just say this, after all I've been through, certain people should hang their heads in shame. This is the life of what it's like, ladies and gentlemen, to be a contact experiencer in the UK. You cherish every moment. You don't know how long your life expectancy is. You don't know what could be around the corner next. But what I can say is this, is that they're real, they're here, and my camera will film them again soon, and I think that it's going to be footage of a very good nature. So I hope that I've shown you a contrast like no other about the ordeal, the struggle, the contact, that's probably nothing like you've read on the internet. Even I, as I speak, sometimes think, Tony, is this really happening to you? Well, yes, it is. And even I have sometimes trouble just grasping the enormity of what I'm seeing and what is going on around me. I really do. But I hope that this has given you some insights into my life and what happens as a contact experiencer in the UK, and I hope you found it of interest. It's been an honour to speak to you. Thank you. Any questions, please fire away.
Yes.
Yeah, go on.
2 questions. How long do you think these aliens or UFOs have been here?
How long have UFOs been here?
Why?
And why? Yeah.
And also, we've only presented a danger to anyone for the last 75 years or so.
A danger to anyone for 75 years, yeah.
Okay. And secondly, you've been helped with your health problems on 2 occasions. Why didn't they help with your mother?
Yes, so I've been helped with my health problems on 2 occasions. Why didn't they help with my mother? I don't know.
Yeah.
The answer to that is I don't know, and in all honesty, I am going to ask them why. Because these people are highly intelligent, they're no fools, so we need to know why. But my mother, bless her, did say at one point in the proceedings that a blonde, blue-eyed man kept coming to visit her. So I do believe that somehow my mother was being targeted. I have no idea why, and I can't answer that question. You know, and it deeply upsets me that I've had 40 years of this, and they just, you know, there's just this standoffishness about them that irritates me. I don't know, I just can't get to the bottom of it. Perhaps they will tell me in the weeks ahead, I've no idea. And the next question was, sorry, about aliens being around for a long time.
How long do you think they've been here, and why? And what, we've only presented a danger to any outside source for the last 75 years.
I think, how long have they been here and why? Once again, the why eludes me, but I have reason to suspect that we are ET. I have reason to suspect that we came from another planet, hence all the pyramids and everything like that. And we are more like them than we realise. And yes, we pose a danger. We pose a danger because we are under control of something that we do not quite understand. And I think ET find it abhorrent that human beings as nations go to war with each other. It's a very big issue with them, because they're at a level of advancement, I do feel that's not beyond us, that is evolved over the top of us. You get what I'm saying? It's kind of like an evolutionary thing. These, what you've asked, are quite baffling questions as to why that is, but we know that the UFO cover-up is definitely with its tentacles with the Nazi Germany at the end of World War II. Most Area 51 veterans indicate that we, the Allies, won the low-tech war, but Germany won the high-tech war. You know, some veterans from Area 51 have actually said that, and I totally concur with that view. Anybody else with a question? Yeah, go on, mate.
I mean, you touched on a couple of references to the stars. You know, I just wondered, where do you see that all going? Do you see much disclosure coming out from all that? Or?
Well, that's a good question. So, the To the Stars Academy, where do I see that all going? And is it disclosure, you're asking, yeah?
To what degree?
To what degree? It's not disclosure, it's disclosure of secret aerospace development. They dare not mention the word alien. They dare not say of the involvement of ET. They dare not say anything like that at all for some bizarre reason, because they just haven't got the balls, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm the messenger. I'm going to get shot at. But they just seem. It's this kind of attitude of, look what we've got in the hangars, dude, and we're all spooks and we know what we're talking about. I don't trust it. I don't like the look of it. And there are people, including myself, who are being targeted in very nefarious ways, and it is unethical, but there's not one word about that either, because they don't have the balls. That's what I think, and I tell them that to the face, whether they like it or not. You know, they just don't have the balls. That's what I think, anyway. Any other question, mate? Yeah. Anyone at all?
You know,
yeah.
You use the term space-time continuum quite a lot, but
yeah.
It's a term in physics that I don't recognise when you're talking about it. It's actually based on the speed of light. So, you know, it's energy equals mass at the speed of light squared. There's where your space continuum is. It's not in this sort of super consciousness way in which you try to describe it. At least it's not in physics anyway.
Yes, okay. I'm referencing that from my own experiences, that it was described what was going on around me was happened in a space-time continuum. It described to me the fact that definitely time is collapsed so that 1 year, so for example the year 2019 can communicate with the year 2140, and that's what I was told from my experiences. I need to look into that then, since the point you raised, because you're certainly not out to get me, I don't believe that of course, but I need to look at that as a very valid point of research and just see where I may have gone wrong with that, so I will look into that definitely. This is what's been coming at me from my experiences, but I might need to look into that further. Yeah?
That's good that you should do so. Also something interesting is that, I expect you've heard of Ben Rich.
Yes, Skunkworks, Ben Rich.
Yeah,
yes, of course, yeah.
Skunkworks.
Yes.
And I suppose
Yes.
you know that Ben Rich has often said that the technology that we already have, we're talking about Earth technology now, is equal, at least equal to the technology of the kind of UFOs that are normally spoken about. I'm not talking about UFOs that might or might not come through some form of space-time. I'm talking about UFOs that actually physically move through time, as it were, from A to B. And we have the technology that can do that now. So
Okay.
how often do you see a space object, and it's one of ours?
No, actually, I don't agree with that. I actually think that it's one of theirs. I've seen that much to believe that it's actually one of theirs, and the fact of the matter is that we're struggling to try and get a grasp on their technology as far as I'm concerned. There again, on saying that, that's the kind of secret research of we the government, we the elected government, because, as you have rightly said, there is Ben Rich, there is the Skunkworks, there is the deep classified stuff that goes on, isn't there? And there's another level. What it clearly shows is a tier level of compartmentalised security, doesn't it, of secrecy that's going on where one hand doesn't know what the other hand's doing. And that has been disastrous for the American government with their cover-up of all this. Absolutely disastrous, I think, for all mankind. Considering that men died on the beaches of Normandy for our freedom, I find it absolutely disgusting, actually. And I've seen this, I've witnessed the apparatus behind the cover-up first, and it's shameful, absolutely shameful what's going on as far as I'm concerned, but that's another story. There you go.
I don't deny that I saw a UFO once.
Yeah.
I'm a science journalist, and I saw a UFO stepping off a ferry boat
Yes.
in Plymouth, and it was at about 2.5, maybe
Yes.
3,000 feet. And it was larger than this room, and it was very, very
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
So I know that this phenomenon exists.
Yes.
All right? But also, I'm aware that the technology that we have is damn close to it.
I
A
would,
lot of
yes.
stuff that people see
Yes.
is based really
Yes.
on our own.
Still doesn't reel out that some of it is ET and some of it is ours, though,
Yeah,
does
how do
it?
you,
Is that what you said?
How do you know the difference?
Yeah, well,
How do
that
you
is the
know
problem.
it's a speck of light?
That is the absolute problem. And not only that as well, if you noted my comment of earlier where I indicated that you have a type of UFO being chased away by two other UFOs that look entirely different, there's an indication going on of some, as you have rightly said, some technical knowledge base that is in conflict with itself or has some sort of Cold War going on with it. I know, as I said earlier, from the India Daily, which I found fascinating, that one of not the arms race, but one of the technological races is flash travel, they called it, speed without acceleration, which is what they're working on at the moment. Fascinating stuff, isn't it? So,
I understand that.
yeah, I think you've raised some very validated points, and I must check out the accuracy of space-time continuum and look into that. It's got to be right, hasn't it? Let's be right about it. It's got to be right when I'm presenting. So we'll have a look at that, definitely. But that there, what I'm showing you there, just sums up the UFO cover-up quite beautifully, and I can't say any more about it, but it's disgusting. It disgusts me after what I've been through, and that's probably all I'm going to say on that matter. Any other questions at all? Oh yeah, back, go on, mate.
When you were talking about the Nordics, and you were saying that you get a sense when they come in.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very much like Edward Meyer over in Switzerland. You know, he had the same thing. He was, in his farmhouse.
May I just ask you, do you mean Billy Meyer, or is he called Edward Meyer? I thought he was called Billy. Have I got that wrong?
Billy, sorry.
Oh, this is Billy, right. Okay, again.
He's Billy Edward Meyer.
Yes.
And he was a sense that about to have a contact and just went out into the fields and
Yes, that happens, yeah.
I met them. So, you know, what you say is exactly the same as
Yes.
the Billy Myers.
It is, mate, yeah. You could describe me as being a bit Billy Meyer, actually, but what irritates me is the elusiveness of it and the fact that I can't get to the bottom of why, and I've got to be careful when they tell me something that it's accurate and all this kind of thing. So there's a lot going on with it, but I'm convinced in the weeks ahead that my camera will not lie. I'm quite convinced that I'll film something pretty good. I'm hoping to anyway in the days ahead, most definitely. Definitely so.
Because he's done predictions of the future as well.
Yes.
He's had a lot of
Yes. The future is what we're being warned about, it would appear, and mankind has really got to understand and cooperate with itself better, I think, or the future's got to be quite uncertain with us as far as I'm concerned. But you do have this classified compartmentalisation system in place that is covering up the UFO situation, most definitely so. And that is very worrying indeed. And you are not going to get any world leader standing up there and telling us what's going on because they fear it. Eisenhower was right, the military-industrial complex, it's real, isn't it? So there we go. Any other questions at all? No? Okay, well, thank you very much indeed, and I hope you enjoyed the insight that I gave you into my life as a contact experiencer. I'm still learning, I don't know it all, but I can honestly say to you that these events happened, and I'm trying to be as journalistic as possible in giving you this information. I just hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I hope I just give you some insights as to what really goes on. Thank you very much.